All good? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is there any sisters? Or there are sisters? Okay. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salatu wa salam ala ibadihi alladhina istafa. We'll make a start because we've got about 50 minutes to get through a bit of material, but if we don't get through it, that's no problem. Inshallah, we'll book another time with ta'ala. Hands up who have been here for the first two parts of the series. Okay, so it's important then I do a little recap of where we're at so you understand where we are, what we are building upon, because it wouldn't make sense for you to listen to what I'm going to talk about today if you don't understand the background of where we have got up to. The recordings are on the MBM, I think, YouTube page from the 13th of September and the 1st of November. If you got a more in-depth sort of review of what we're going to discuss today. So verses number 19 to verse number 33 in Surah Al-Ma'arij, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses a very realistic phenomena that human beings have, and this phenomena is called the disease of Haloo'a. And he says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا, that the human being has been created with this innate dormant state of the disease of Haloo'a. And we went in depth of what that word means, if you can refer back to the recording, but just to get you an idea, the disease of Haloo'a is characterized by sort of two very clear symptoms between brackets. إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا is basically meaning whenever a small amount of harm or a challenge or a trigger comes in the way of that person, they become jazu', and jazu' is a word for somebody who is very shallow, very quick to snap. Their world collapses very quickly. They have no substance to deal with the reality of life. But the whole idea of the series is to recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that innal insana, which is an overall incumbent term for every human being. So just because you're Muhammad or Mustafa or you come to the masjid and you've been to Hajj or you pray 5 times a day or this or that, you're not immune from the risk factors of this disease. Okay? Especially in modern day times where everybody's just sort of so busy with social media and this and that, you subconsciously develop a very shallow depth and perception of life, and as a result you become jazu'. So the disease of Haloo'a, the first symptom is إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا, and the other side of that disease, another key symptom, إِذَا مَسَّهُ الْخَيْرُ مَنُوعًا, when any good comes your way, any good, the quantity is not explained in the verses, any good, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's health, whether it's wealth, that individual becomes possessive and hoarding of that good and feels threatened to share or give. Okay? So, two key symptoms. Whenever life throws a challenge at you, you crumble and you're quick to collapse. You can't handle the smallest triggers in life. Whenever good comes your way, you think it's your own and you just accumulate, and you hoard and you don't want to share. Whether it's money, whether it's health, whether it's wealth, whether it's knowledge, whether it's time. Those are the two key symptoms. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from verse number 21 onwards starts to discuss the treatments or actions that prevent that disease from manifesting itself in the believer. So in part 1 of the treatment series, we discussed the first 2 treatments, and that was the الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ دَائِمُونَ, those that are constant in their prayer, but their prayer has a quality of da'im, and that is not khushu', but da'im is a calm state of mind whilst you are praying. Again, the details of what I'm saying, you really need to go back to the recording and get the deeper in depth of what I explained so you can understand. And then the second quality of the people, or the second treatment of the people that don't want to have that disease to come to the surface, is that on top of the constant prayer, they are always giving. There is a fixed amount of giving of money for charity purposes. And we explained that Surah Al-Ma'arij was not revealed after the pillar of zakat was ordained upon Muslim. It was before. And that it's part of the Meccan revelation of the Quran. And the Meccan theme of the revelation of the Quran, it's all about thought process principles. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to instill in your mind that if you don't want to become a shallow person that's stingy and hoardy, one of the ways to conquer your nafs is to always have a fixed amount of giving. And miraculously, we explained last time that the amount that you give is not stated, as in the quantity, but the principle is I'm always giving. So you don't need to have billboards. You don't need to have very graphic with emojis and this and that on Instagram to get emotionally riled up to give. The Muslim by default is always giving. That's the thought process that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to have in the Muslims. So today, we will add more layers on top of that treatment so that the believer recognizes the seriousness of this disease. Because this is a very, very problematic thought process when somebody becomes Haloo'a. Because life's full of challenges, so you need to be able to take on the hits in order to move forward. If you are Jazu' and you collapse at every little challenge that comes your way, you'll never be able to move forward in life. If you are Manu', Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you some goodness, stages in your life, whether it's health, whether it's wealth, whether it's time, whether it's knowledge. And He wants to see, what do you do with it? Do you hoard it and you keep it to yourself, or do you share it? Because when you hoard, you are the classification definition of that disease. But when you share, there is a bit of relief and freedom that you don't feel threatened to share. Does that make sense? That you're not threatened, or you don't feel that I'm going to lose if I share. And we explained more in that in the last session about how this is so paramount in modern day life, because everybody's living in a capitalistic system where the world is telling you that safety and good planning and the right thing to do is just accumulate, accumulate, and accumulate. And you accumulate for the sake of accumulation. Whereas in Islam, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do is to work hard and accumulate for the sake of giving and benefiting your immediate family and the wider community. There's a very, very big difference. And it challenges the thought processes of everything that you hear out there. If the community and the society, Muslim unfortunately have fallen into that trap. It's all about expanding your assets, expanding your portfolio, which is fine if you're expanding for the sake of a bigger purpose. But if you just keep expanding for the sake of expanding, then you have become Jazu'. So that it's very important that this distinction is made. Because if you don't have that distinction, you'll fall into the thought process and what everybody's doing, which is accumulate for the sake of accumulation. Right. With that brief background introduction, today we'll go into the next verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يُصَدِّقُونَ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مِنْ عَذَابِ رَبِّهِمْ مُشْفِقُونَ إِنَّ عَذَابَ رَبِّهِمْ غَيْرَ مَأْمُونَ. So the first treatment that we'll discuss today, which is treatment number 3, is that these believers that do not want the disease of Haloo'a to manifest in themselves have this unique mentality of tasdeeq biyawm ad-din. Now, the key words are yawm ad-din. Everybody knows what yawm ad-din is? Day of judgment. Very briefly, that's what yawm ad-din is. But the quality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions here is not they believe in the day of judgment. They have the trait of tasdeeq in the yawm of judgment, in the day of judgment. So what is the difference? What is this word tasdeeq that is specifically mentioned in this verse to be an augmenting aspect to your prayer and your giving? To understand what the word tasdeeq is, we'll need to go into the deeper linguistic parts of the Arabic language. So, we're going to go into some military of the old types. Everybody's seen the famous war series and historical series, whether it's Artughrul, whether it's Orhan Bey or Osman Bey and all these ones. You know, the military battles, they always have a brigade that throws spears. Okay? And those spears are designed to harm But when they land or reach their target, they need to be strong and sturdy in order to penetrate and do some damage. But if you grab a branch that's long, just go outside for exercise purposes, if you want to break it, the weakest point is always the middle part. The middle part. You go and you snap it in the middle like that, it snaps. So a spear, by default, even if it's long and even if it has a nice sharp pointy bit at the end, if the middle is not strengthened, it's going to be weak. In fact, when it gets to the target, it's going to break. If you ever find somebody throwing a spear, if that middle bit is weak, the spear wobbles in the air. And then when it gets to the target, it just does nothing. So what the military manufacturers used to do back in the old days when spear was part of the warfare was that they will make the middle part of the spear filled with a very dense substance in order to strengthen the whole spear to do its purpose. That process of filling the middle of the spear with a strong, dense material was called saduq. Sad, fatha, dal, dhamma, qaf, sikna. And so from that process, the Arabs internalized this idea that for someone to be strong, they need to be filled on the inside with conviction and affirmation of their principles. So the Arabs, from that original strengthening of the military spear, when they filled the middle part with a dense substance, internalized the thought process that in order for something to be saduq or strong, they need to be filled internally with affirmation and conviction. Does that make sense? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that one of the treatments of the disease of Haloo'a, which is this part of the verse, is not an action, it's a thought process. That you don't have just believe in the Day of Judgment, because we all say that at lip service. You have tasdeeq in the Day of Judgment. Now, like I've just said, tasdeeq involves filling your thought process and your mentality with the right material so that it's firm and strong and it doesn't shake. And so the spear, when it's filled with tasdeeq, when it hits a target, it doesn't break. Think of the target that the spear is hitting as challenges in life. If you hit challenges with no inner conviction, you're not going to do the job. You're going to crack. But if you're filled with conviction and affirmation about the day of Yawmuddin, the Day of Judgment, when you face life's challenges, you're not going to break. Now, an interesting observation is that we normally say that it's first belief followed by action, correct? But in these treatments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is disclosing here, He started with the actions first and then reaffirmed the conviction and affirmation in the Day of Judgment. Why is that? We've all been accustomed to have the order the other way around. Believe in Allah, believe in the Day of Judgment, and prove it with the actions. But in this treatment series in Surah Al-Ma'arij, the actions came first. Salat, giving money, and then tasdeeq and Yawmuddin. How come? See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts verses in a particular order. It's not out of place. It's not by lack of coincidence. It's in that order for a particular purpose. Always understand that, internalize that. The verses are placed in a particular order for a particular purpose. If you don't understand it once, go back and revisit the different angles that you can look at the verses from the bigger picture. You see, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do is to never have the mentality that I am set, ever, as a believer. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and we can all testify that when we start practicing properly, between brackets, because we are doing the right things, shaitan will come to your mind and will start to whisper that you're doing enough. You are good enough. I'm praying 5 times a day. Alhamdulillah, you're doing great. you're giving money every day, or you have a fixed donation to Masjid Bayt al-Ma'mur or to this charity or that charity. You don't need to do that. Shaitan will come and tell you, just stick to the zakat, just stick to the odd donation here and there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come and crush that potential roadblock to your treatment. He says, just remember, just because you're praying 5 times a day and above, in da'im form, just because you're giving all the time, don't ever forget that you need to always reaffirm the conviction of the Day of Judgment. As in, you are not set. And you're not what? You're never set. No one is set. No one is immune. The moment you stop working is the moment you pass away. That's the mentality of a Muslim. That's the mentality of a Muslim. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts that affirmation and conviction in the Day of Judgment after the prayer and the giving. Because if you pray on time and you give on time, you might fall into the disease of I am set. And no one is ever set. And the moment you fall into the disease of I'm doing enough is the moment you start going backwards. The moment you start going backwards is when the moment of the disease of Haloo'a starts coming to the surface. SubhanAllah. How the order of the verses is miraculous and specific to the psychology of human beings. This can only come from the Creator. No way it comes from anywhere else. Yawmuddin, we explained it also at this masjid in Surah Al-Fatiha series in depth, which is again available in the recordings on the YouTube channel. But Yawmuddin, in a very superficial understanding, means not just the Day of Judgment, it is the day in which you will be dealt with accordingly how you deserve to be dealt with. Deen is from dain in Arabic, debt. In Arabic, deen is religion, but also the words dal, the letters dal, ya, and nun are used in the word dain, which is debt. And in Arabs, they used to say, kama tadinu tudan. As you have been dealing with people, you will be dealt with. And so the Day of Judgment, in a bigger contextual meaning, is that you will be dealt with as you deserve to be dealt with precisely. In this world, you'll be dealing with people, you might be shortchanging people, you might be thinking you're shortchanging and getting away with slip-ups here and there with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the Day of Judgment, everything's going to be precise. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He didn't say, الَّذِينَ يُصَدِّقُونَ بِيَوْمِ الْعِقَابِ or يَوْمِ الْعَذَابِ. He said a very specific word, specific to the context of these verses. That the Day of Judgment, between brackets, is the day that you will be dealt with precisely how you deserve to be dealt with. And this is the bit that you have control with in this world. You can set up the stage of how you want to be dealt with on the Day of Judgment. Does that make sense? So that's the third treatment. First one was what? Constant da'im prayer. On top of which is built the constant amount of giving. And the third aspect is a thought process bit. The conviction, or this is the word tasdeeq, in the day in which you will be dealt with, how you deserve to be dealt with. Question, what is the real name of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? The first Khalifa of Islam, everybody knows Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Do you know what's his real name? Huh? Abdullah ibn Sheikh Abdul Aziz. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq's real name. Abdullah ibn Abi Quhafa. That's his actual name. So Abu Bakr and As-Siddiq are actually nicknames. Abu Bakr means the father of the first people, as in he was the first man to be accepting of Islam. And he was the first one to a lot of things in Islam. That's why he's nicknamed Abu Bakr, like the first to do things. But As-Siddiq, that term, which is very similar to At-Tasdiq, same origins that we just discussed. Why was he called As-Siddiq? That nickname came to him after the event of Isra and Mi'raj, when even some of the companions of our Prophet ﷺ some of them struggled with the concept of the Prophet going to Jerusalem and ascending to heavens one night. Which shows that Iman is at levels. But when they went to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, let's not talk about Iman. He was filled with so much of the good stuff, conviction and affirmation, that when they said that your friend is saying this and this, there was not a moment of hesitation. Not a moment of hesitation. He just simply said, if Muhammad has said it, then it is the truth. Point black and white, no hesitation. That is not lip service. That comes because on the inside he is filled with affirmation and conviction. That's what he was called as-Siddiq. Because just like that spear, he's been filled with the right stuff. So when this challenge came to him, it didn't shake him. It didn't shake him. It shook a lot of people, but it didn't shake him. Radiallahu anh. That's why, just as a cool side note, that's why he's nicknamed Abu Bakr, and that's why he's nicknamed as-Siddiq. Because of that particular meaning of conviction and affirmation when the challenges come your way without anything shaking you. Can we achieve that? You can. You can. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is not an angel. He's not a prophet. He's a great companion, radiallahu anh. But the tools that are available to him to enable him to reach that level are available to me and you. The tools are the Quran and the message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The tools are there for all of us. Don't just think of the companions as these untouchable, lofty individuals that you can't get to. Yes, we can't compare to them in terms of action, but the tools that led them to be like that are available to us as well. So at least we can strive to be like character like them. Because we have the same tools. Same Quran, same Sunnah. Nothing's changed. That's the beauty of Islam. They didn't have a magical shortcut to something else that we don't have. The Prophet was alive to them. We have his seerah documented 100% in front of us. But they committed to it. And this is the challenge for us, specifically in a non-Muslim country, is that they dedicated their whole life to that pathway of living. We sometimes struggle. We choose this at this moment, we choose that at that moment. And that's a challenge for us. That's normal. That comes with the territory. The next treatment. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مِنْ عَذَابِ رَبِّهِمْ مُشْفِقُونَ إِنَّ عَذَابَ رَبِّهِمْ غَيْرُ مَأْمُونَ. So what linguists say is that in these treatments that I mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'arij, linguistically they are all tied to salat. Linguistically, grammatically. Because everything begins with a salat, and then every other verse that talks about a treatment, if you read the Quran, begins with the letter waw. وَالَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ وَالَّذِينَ يُصَدِّقُونَ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مِنْ عَذَابِ رَبِّهِمْ مُشْفِقُونَ. Until the list of the treatments finishes. It's about nine treatments. Just having that waw there miraculously couples everything to salat as your foundation of the treatment. And what that says in plain English is that you will struggle to defeat the disease of Haloo'a if you skip prayers and think, oh yeah, I'm just going to give sadaqah. Not only are you going to have major problems on the Day of Judgment, we all know the catastrophe that awaits somebody who deliberately doesn't commit to salat. We're not going to sugarcoat it, we're not going to go black and white and this and that. You got a big problem waiting for you if you don't commit to salat, at least the 5 obligatory prayers. You got a big problem. But that's in the Day of Judgment. In this world, you also have problems. Because salat wasn't just supposed to benefit you in the hereafter. There are benefits in this world. So many. One of them is, it corrects your thought process. It realigns your thought process every time. Because life is dragging you this way and that way. Let's face it, even our Muslim countries, let's not just point the finger at non-Muslim society, even our Muslim countries, the way that life is outside the masjid is not necessarily all in line with the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it's Indonesia, whether it's Malaysia, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's the subcontinent. Let's face it. And so without salat to realign your thought process, you will think that that's okay, what's happening outside the salat. And then the salat comes in and realigns your thought process and gives you the trigger that if I see something wrong, I need to at least say something or try and encourage people or counsel people. But without the salat, you don't have the realignment of the thought process. And so everybody's giving charity, but at the same time they're making money the haram way. So you'd be like, yeah, I'll just give charity and make money the haram way. Yeah, it's good for you to give charity, but you can't make money the haram way. If you don't have salat to realign your thought process, you'll think that's normal. And so on and so on. So the next treatment is الَّذِينَ هُمْ مِنْ عَذَابِ رَبِّهِمْ مُشْفِقُونَ. And the simple translation of this verse is that these believers are from the punishment of their Rabb mushfiqun. Again, normally in human understanding, punishment is associated with fear. The word for fear in Arabic is not mushfiqun. The word for fear is khawf. So you don't hear the verse saying وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مِنْ عَذَابِ رَبِّهِمْ خَائِفُونَ. Allah says الَّذِينَ هُمْ مِنْ عَذَابِ رَبِّهِمْ مُشْفِقُونَ. What's the difference? The words that are chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not by coincidence. Not by coincidence. Remember that over and over. Not by coincidence. What is the difference between khawf and ishfaq? Khawf and ishfaq. The easiest way to understand the difference between khawf, which is fear, and what ishfaq, which is the word in this verse, is to think of yourself in front of two different types of kings. You have a tyrant king that is Haloo'a, snappy, and will punish you at the shortest shortcoming. The slightest shortcoming. So when you stand in front of that kind of king, you are khaif. You are walking on ice. You are walking on eggshells because any little slip up, there's issues. You know there's punishment coming your way. Ishfaq is a totally different mindset. Ishfaq is associated with you serving a king that is just and that is fair and that is done so much for his people, and part of his justice is to have punishment for those that are on purpose transgressing. Very big difference between the two kings. They are both called kings linguistically, but in reality it's very different. So when you stand in front of a leader or a figure of authority, that you know they're a figure of authority, but you know they're just, you know they're fair, you know they do and go above and beyond for their subjects. And part of them being an authority is that they need to have punishment for those that transgress. The way you think of that figure of authority is very different to the way that you think of the snappy king that just punishes at the shortest or the slightest shortcoming. So ishfaq is the state of mind of the believer that they are wary of the consequences of transgressing against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just because out of fear, but bigger aspect is that out of admiration for how much they've done for them. Out of admiration for how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done for you. There's a very big difference. When you don't want to upset or disrespect the entity that's done so much for you, even though they are a figure of authority. A simple example is a very good relationship between a parent and their child. A simple example. There are some parents that are snappy and are all just about hitting. And that kind of relationship doesn't really produce a good progress in the future. And there are some parents and leaders that are patient, go above and beyond, spend their time and effort to educate. And so when you get old and you transgress or think about transgression against them, you think twice. Not just out of the fear of punishment, but out of love and admiration and awe for what they have done for you. That's what ishfaq is. It is fear, in Arabic, it is fear that's coupled with love and admiration and awe for the entity of authority. And so that mentality changes you. Because if you just read the English translation, all it says is they are afraid from the punishment of their Lord. It's a very bad translation. And if you don't go into the deeper aspects of the Arabic language, unfortunately, it paints the wrong picture of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not that snappy, that snap kind of authority that's out there to punish people. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dispels this mythical problem that humans have, and He says, مَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ. What has Allah got to do from looking out for you to make a mistake and punish you? What has He got to gain? Nothing. He's not like that. He's not like that, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to be very, very clear that we need to be aware of the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but that's the sort of primary school level understanding of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more mature way is to think of Him as that figure of authority that has done so much for me, that continues to provide for me, and that is just and that is fair. Now the question is, that comes with this aspect of punishment, should we be uncomfortable with the institute of consequence? Should we be uncomfortable with the reality of Jahannam? A question. In the politically correct world out there, all the people are saying, if God is so perfect, why is there an institute of punishment? You hear that all the time. Why should there be everlasting punishment? The simple answer to that is that in this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear that He lets people decide, and the justice is in the hereafter. But He doesn't claim that justice is perfect in this world, subhanahu wa ta'ala. This world is actually full of imperfections. So anybody with the mentality that I'm looking for perfection in this world will never find it. You can analyze and be an atheist and agnostic or this or that, blah, 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 every ism out there. You will never prove that this world is perfect. This world is imperfect. And one of the elements of imperfection is justice. Like, for example, if somebody commits crimes against 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, what is the worst punishment you can give them? One punishment. Does that equal the crimes that they did? It doesn't. So that's, between brackets, imperfect justice in this world. But in the hereafter, there is perfect justice. And what wasn't accounted for in this life, like we said, Yawmuddin, will you be dealt with precisely as you deserve to be dealt with, will be accounted for in the institutes and the courts of the Day of Judgment. And that's miraculous. In essence, as a Muslim, we need to say, Alhamdulillah, for the institute of consequences. We need to be acknowledging that as human beings, part of us only functions and only stays away from the bad things when there's a deterrent. When there's what? A deterrent. We can all testify to how crime is rampant in these parts of the world because the law is what? Soft. And in countries where the law is, between brackets, harsh, it's not harsh. The law by itself is supposed to be a deterrent. Crimes are less. Why? As human beings, if there's no deterrent, a chunk of them will cross the line. That same chunk that crosses the line in the countries where the deterrent is not there, put them in an environment where there's a deterrent, they will think twice about committing issues. That's human nature. And so, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has placed the institute of consequence. Because some of us can listen to an amazing lecture and know what the right thing is and will do the right thing and stay away from bad things. Some of us get tempted. Yes, I know this is wrong, but I want to cross that line. I want to make money quickly by stealing or shortchanging people or this or that. What will deter them? The institute of consequence. And if after knowing all of that, they still do it, then obviously they're liable for consequence. Does that make sense? So, the fourth treatment was the mentality that I am from the punishment of my Rabb, mushfiq. Not just afraid. Afraid is a poor word. Mushfiq. I acknowledge that the institute of consequence is there, but it is from the authority that has done so much for me and loves me and continues to care for me, and out of his justice, there is an element of consequence because human beings need a deterrent in order to stay on the straight and narrow. That makes sense? Khair, inshallah. We're making good time. What time is Isha? 10:30. Okay. If I'm talking too much, let me know. We can pause. Is it a bit too much or keep going? Keep going? Okay. So how many we've done? We've done 4 so far. The next treatment is وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ, that they are safeguarding their private parts, and we all know what that means. So I'm just going to skip that treatment because alhamdulillah the Muslim community is focused on that part of the formula, and we all know what that means. The last one I'll share with today is وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. And this is going to be a meaty one, so I might get through it today, I might not, but I will take my time because it's important. So we've talked about 2 treatments that are actions of the individual. Salat is an action of the individual. You doing it. If you do it, you benefit. If you don't do it, no one knows. Spending, giving money. Only you know your salary, how much you have, and only you know how much you spend. You spend, you benefit. You don't spend, you lose. The next 2 treatments were thought processes. The affirmation and the conviction of the Day of Judgment, and the ishfaq from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, thought processes. Now, is life all about thought processes in an individual setting? No. Majority of life is dealing with other human beings, correct? Community interactions. So is that part of the equation missed by this treatment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, it's not. So the next 3 verses are talking about ethical affairs. Ethical affairs. Meaning that what? The complete formula of a Muslim is believe on the inside. That translates you fulfilling the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, relationship between you and Him, and also how you deal with your fellow human beings. You cannot separate them. You can't be a good Muslim inside the masjid, and outside the masjid you do whatever you want. And you can't be a person of high moral conduct outside the masjid and you don't pray in the masjid, or you don't do your salat. It's a complete package. The human being is a mind, body and spirit, and human beings around them. Islam addresses all of these aspects. You can't separate it. So وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ is talking about the concept of amana, and I'm sure the word amana is something familiar. Ahd is a term that I will explain, but the key word here is the mentality about approaching amana and approaching ahd. Amana is trust. We all know what amana is. Ahd is a covenant, which is a form of contractual acceptance between parties, and we'll talk about that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to not just fulfill your amana, and not just fulfill your contracts, not just fulfill, He wants you to be a ra'i. Again, the word is specific. الَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. So what is a ra'un? Who are the ra'un? Ra'un are the people that are characterized by the trait of a ra'i. Who is a ra'i? A ra'i is a shepherd. In Arabic language, a ra'i is a shepherd. And that is one of the noble jobs that was shared by the majority of the prophets and the lineage of human history, alayhim salam ajma'in. So what is so special about the mentality of a ra'i? The majority of the prophets had that job, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying when it comes to ethical affairs between human beings, the Muslim is not just fulfilling those affairs, the Muslim has the approach of a ra'i, different to what non-Muslim society is. I'm telling you right now. So when you listen to this, it's going to be quite heavy. It could challenge the way that you deal with things, but this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be like. To understand the mentality of a ra'i, you need to do or have a look at what the ra'i does. What does the shepherd do in their day-to-day job? A shepherd has basically three functions. Number one, he ensures that the sheep or the flock he's looking after is well fed. What does the ra'i do? He ensures that the sheep he's looking after are all well fed. So you can translate it to be that as a ra'i of the ethical affairs, you don't fulfill them at the bare minimum. Like you don't have a patch of grass that's luscious and a bare patch of grass, and you see the ra'i take the flock to that. You see him take it to the rich one. So they are all filled to capacity. The ra'i wants to make the sheep as big as possible. We all know that. So when it comes to your ethical affairs, you don't do the bare minimum. You fulfill them to your utmost and beyond. And this is the bit that's hardest in a non-Muslim environment and also in our Muslim countries. Ethical affairs are ignored. And if somebody is lucky enough to deal with somebody who is ethical, they do the bare minimum. But no one thinks of that my mentality towards ethical affairs, to my trusts, to my contracts, is I go above and beyond. Not for the sake of the paycheck, not for the sake of what people say about me, because this is the mentality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to have. It's a very different mentality. So for example, this is cemented by the hadith of Prophet ﷺ when he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ إِذَا عَمِلَ أَحَدُكُمْ عَمَلًا أَن يُتِمَّهُ وَيُتْقِنَهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet ﷺ is saying here, giving you a life formula of how you do your work. This is a revolutionary hadith. I have it in my mind the whole time when I go to my work. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ إِذَا عَمِلَ أَحَدُكُمْ عَمَلًا أَن يُتِمَّهُ وَيُتْقِنَهُ. Allah loves. Allah doesn't command, Allah loves. Like you can do the bare minimum to commandment, but if you want to be loved by Allah, it's not just salat, it's got to do with your ethical affairs. Allah loves when somebody does a job and there's no elaboration on what job it is. It could be the job that you do at your home, washing the dishes, doing your room, at your school, at your masjid, at your paid job, at your volunteer, any job that you commit to. Allah loves that if somebody commits to a job, that not only do you complete it, you do it to the utmost level that you can do. Perfection is beyond us. But He wants you to, the word is itqan. Itqan in Arabic means to do it to the best of your ability. And that's very different. You have people in the corporate world, they're getting paid 9 till 5, but for 2 hours they do nothing. I mean, the ethical affairs here when it comes to work is good. If you go to the Middle East, I don't know what it's like in the subcontinent of India, but they have the worst working ethics in the world. They turn up late and leave early and get nothing done and they get paid for it. No wonder the countries are not productive. That's reality. If the society is functioning by this hadith, that when you do a job, you complete it and you do it to the utmost of your ability at every single level, the society will flourish beyond anything you can imagine. When people shortchange the system, yeah, they might be getting money without having to do the work, but then I understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's watching doesn't approve of such affairs or ethics when you do work. He wants you to be a ra'i. Just like the shepherd takes the sheep to the most luscious part of the grass, are they all well fed? You are supposed to do, not just complete your job, go above and beyond to do it to the best of your ability. Again, it's not for the paycheck. It's not for the people to say, oh, mashallah, look at him go above and beyond. It's because this is the formula that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do. So if your boss is there, you are a ra'i of your job. If your boss is not there, or the security camera is not there, or the speed camera is not there, you still do the right thing. What is that feeding? That's feeding taqwa, isn't it? Taqwa is not just when you pray, not just when you fast. It's not abstaining from alcohol or not looking at haram. When you work, there's taqwa as well. That's how you do it when you work. Second characteristic of a ra'i is that the ra'i is always watching the parameter of the flock to make sure that no sheep goes outside the parameter of control into the danger zone or leaves the flock, correct? That's why they have dogs and now they have drones to hoard the sheep in so they're under control. And so what does that mean to me and you when it comes to ethical affairs is that not only are you doing what we just talked about, above and beyond for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you're very wary of putting yourself in an environment where you can cross the line. You are very careful of putting yourself in an environment where you cross the line of ethical affairs when dealing with people, when it comes to trusts, when it comes to contracts. Now, this is going to challenge you. This is going to challenge a lot of people. In the Arabic language, an amana is a trust. And a trust is supposed to be put locked, safe away, safeguarded, so that it cannot be taken away. We all understand that. So everybody's got, if you have $10,000 cash, you're not going to have it lying on the sofa, you're going to lock it away. If it belongs to someone else, you're going to lock it away even more. It's an amana. An ahad belongs to a three-layer description of what promises are in the Arabic language. So a wa'ad in Arabic is a promise, verbal promise. Like for example, I make a deal with my brother here. We're going to meet at 10 o'clock to go play some soccer. We all agree to 10 o'clock. I turn up at 10 o'clock. He turns up at 10:15. Even though he said, yes, I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock. So he hasn't fulfilled the wa'ad. Now, how do you distinguish a wa'ad from a ahad? Is that a wa'ad, you do not fulfill the promise, but there's no sort of written consequences if you don't turn up to soccer at 10 o'clock, if you turn up at 10:15. The world's not going to end. But there is moral consequences, like it's not nice when you agree to a time and you don't turn up. I mean, the common phenomena of Arab time or Indonesian time is a great violation of the concept of wa'ad. Or even they call it Muslim time. I hate that term. Muslims are supposed to be before time, not on time. But everybody comes after the appointed time. You are breaking the moral etiquette of what a wa'ad is. No one is going to slap you, but there's issues. Arabs are not like that. The Muslims are not supposed to be like that. They are on time. That's why salat is a regimented time exercise. Yeah? That's wa'ad. Ahad is a covenant. And under that covenant, you have a contract between people on a domestic level, and there's contract between people on a working level. So the working level contracts, we all know, it's got clause, 3 written warnings, sit up this time, leave this time, do this, do this. That's what a ahad is. The third and highest level is called mithaq. Mithaq refers to something that is very, very dense and huge in consequences when not fulfilled. And the word that is used, and this is going to challenge a lot of people, and I apologize, and the word that is used to describe the marriage contract in Arabic is not ahad, it's not wa'ad, it's not KK, it's not nikah, it's mithaq in the Quran. And not just mithaq, mithaqan ghalidha, a heavy contract, a heavy mithaq. Sorry, I said the word contract, a heavy mithaq. It's a step up. And so in the Arabic language, the word mithaq is used to describe contracts that, when not fulfilled properly with the ethics that we just talked about, have disastrous consequences on the individual, on the family, and the community, and on the society. And the question is, Islam makes it very, very simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very simple about what are the expectations of marriage, who's got these rights and these responsibilities, who's got these rights and these responsibilities. They're very clear, they're very simple. But unfortunately, this is the biggest area in which, dare I say it, in the house of Allah, that the Allah of marriage has become the culture, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So people will say, how do you get married in your culture? You hear that saying? Oh, the Lebanese do it this way, the Iraqis do it this way, the Indonesians do it this way, this, that way. And no one sits back and asks, are all these customs actually in line with the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? Like, I stand to be corrected, but I've read that in the subcontinent, the mahar is given by the female to the guy, its family. Is that correct? How could the mahar be given from the female to the male? Where is Allah in this formula? And then even the concept of mahar, the concept of divorce, the concept of inheritance. This is what I mean by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not separate the ethical affairs and the dealings of human beings from His guidance. It's us that has separated His guidance from the place of worship to everyday life. And no wonder there's issues in the community. No wonder. It's not because the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wrong, is that we've chosen to apply it in this aspect and not this aspect. It's like getting a human body and deciding that I'm going to cut one artery and keep the other artery. No, I'm sorry, the body functions with all the arteries intact and all the veins intact. It doesn't work to cut out one and expect it to function the same way. It doesn't. So amana is a trust. Ahd is a covenant. Covenant. Under that covenant, you have day-to-day contracts between people and you have working contracts. And your approach to these contracts is that you are a ra'i. And a ra'i is feeding the sheep from the luscious part, making sure the sheep are not going to the edge and the perimeter. And also the sheep, the ra'i's got this one other aspect. In that in a flock of sheep, say there's 100, there's always a small percentage that are sort of, a bit loose, and they get close to the edge, despite the shepherd's best effort. But he doesn't just ignore them. He doesn't ignore them. He doesn't say, well, I've got 95 sheep here. If these 5 go away, that's fine. I've still got 95. No, he still goes out of his way to reel in those 5. So if you find that in your dealing with a work situation or a family situation that you are offering 95% of what you can, but there's 5% that you slack on, don't let the shaitan trick you and say, you're offering 95%, who cares about this 5%? Everybody else, like for example at work, you go above and beyond, but the non-Muslims around you go for a 90-minute lunch break, and you're doing by what the book says you do 30 minutes. And you go, well, yeah, I can do 35, I can do 40, everybody's doing an hour and a half, what's wrong with an extra 5 minutes? That's it, 5 sheep that are at the perimeter. Don't ever fall for that trap. Because the shepherd doesn't ignore those 5 sheep that are going through near the perimeter. He brings them back into the flock to make sure they don't go outside into the danger boundary. That's your approach to amana and ahd. And so this verse in particular challenges a lot of people because, we pray half an hour a day if you do your 5 daily prayers. But this has got to do with 8 to 10 hours of your everyday affairs. And it's heavy that you approach your dealing with people with ethical affairs that are guided by the 7th heaven, not by what society dictates, not by everybody else is doing. But this is the treatment for you not to become what? Haloo'a. This is the bare minimum. Like for example, this amazing masjid is from the Indonesian community, correct? The biggest Muslim country in the world. The reason why they became Muslim is because when traders got to Indonesia, they took these ethical affairs into everyday practice. And see the effect it has generations down the line. Look at the barakah that we have right now because these early Muslims applied these ethical affairs in their day-to-day life. And so when a human being sees someone honest, trustworthy, going above and beyond, does not cheat, does not shortchange, does not backstab, does not use foul language, says something, they commit to it, you're just amazed, you get inspired. Of course you're going to live like that. It's perfect. It's perfect, isn't it? So don't be deceived by everybody making quick money out there because they're cheating and they're shortchanging the system, and it's always a quicker way to make money via haram way. Always. Always. The shaitan is supporting their system. So it's by default easy to make money the haram way. Whereas the halal way is not about making money in the bank account, it's about making money for the bank account in the hereafter. It's about what? Making money for the bank account in the hereafter first. And then the money in the bank account of this world fills automatically. Whether you like it or it'll just happen. What do we got? 10:20. Khalas. I'll stop at this verse. We need to have another session because I'm not finished with this the remainder of the surah, but that's 50 minutes. Let's open the floor for questions and answers. The reason why I stop at 50 minutes, just to let you know, is that in the world of education, they tell you that after 50 minutes of listening, every student's brain shuts down. So it's Saturday, it's late, there's no point of talking anymore. Otherwise, it's just going to go in this ear, out there, and there's no point. So, barakallah feekum, we'll stop here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to do another session to complete these amazing treatments. We'll open the floor for Q&A until Isha Salat, inshallah. Barakallah feekum.
Is there any question? Sister, mother, no question in the bag? No question.
The only question is the smell. Is it the barbecue chicken pizza or the seafood pizza? I think that's the biggest question. Khair inshallah. Khair inshallah. If there's no questions, all good. We'll finish with kafarat al-masjid. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.